Okay, today is December 14th, 2020, and we are interviewing Louis Hahn about his military career. So, Louis, would you please give me your full name?
Call me Dad.
I know, Dad. Give me your full name.
Yeah. Louis H. Hahn.
What's the H for? Louis Henry.
Louis Henry Hahn.
Okay.
And
when were you born?
I was born 1930 in Kansas.
Okay.
And
so you entered the service in what day did you enter the service, and what branch did you enter into?
I entered it in the Army, and I was one of two other brothers that went in. My older brother Bill and older brother Irwin, and as of today they're both gone. But I also had another brother, Larry, that served in Vietnam later on. And then I also had a son and a daughter that was in the Air Force. My daughter Joan was in the Air Force for 4 years, and my son was in the Air Force for 8 years. And I had a lot of uncles, and we were
generational.
My dad was in the war.
Yeah.
In the First World War.
So what made you decide to enter into the Army?
Well, I didn't have to go to the service because I had two brothers in, and I was the only other brother, and if you're the third brother to serve, if you're old enough, you don't have to go, but I volunteered because I wanted to serve the country and do my part. So, and another reason I done it was I was helping the folks. They were struggling, raising 10 kids, and I had made arrangements. When I went into service, I got an allotment for my folks, which meant they got all the money except I was getting $17 a month when I was in the service. And that went on until 6 months before I got out, and Mom canceled it so I'd have some money when I come home.
So how much, you kept $17. How much did you send to your mom and dad?
I don't know what my wages were.
Yeah.
All I knew I was getting $17 a month. I think it was about $700 a month.
So you entered into the Army. Where did you enter the Army?
I went to, my papers say I entered in Kansas City, Missouri, but I took my training at Fort Riley, Kansas, and I trained for the infantry while I was in Fort Riley.
And how long were you at Fort Riley?
I was at Fort Riley for about 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
6 weeks.
And so you
trained to be an infantryman.
And so after Fort Riley, where'd you go?
After Fort Riley, I went, was the ship out of Seattle, and I come to Denver, and we flew from Denver to Seattle. And then I waited for a ship to go to Japan at Seattle. And then I was on the ship. Took us 2 weeks on the ship. But on our way, I don't know why we went up, but we went up the coastline, went up to Adak, Alaska, and stopped there. I don't know why, but we never got off the ship or nothing. And I don't think something happened there. They took on some more. There was civilians on our ship. The bottom deck was civilians, and we were on the upper deck on the General M.M. Patrick.
M.M. Patrick?
Yeah.
About how many men were on that ship, do you know?
Oh, I got a picture of it, but there was thousands.
Thousands. So how many slept in wherever you were sleeping?
Well, we slept in bunks, and I was luckily I was on the top bunk, because 90% of the people on the ship got seasick the first 2 or 3 days, and everybody was heaving. And I was on the top bunk. I got sick, but I never heaved. But everybody below got puked on sometime or other.
So how did they do your meals while you were on the ship?
Well, they had a mess hall where we ate, and it was kind of looked like a bar. It was a bar, kind of a circle, and they put your meal out on a tray, and you sit there at the bar, kind of the bar, and they ate, and you better hang on to the tray, because if it scooted over, if you didn't hang on to it, the ship was swaying, and it would sway, and the guy next to you might puke in it.
Oh, so no.
That happened. I've seen it happen quite a few times.
So what month, do you remember what month you were on the ship?
I was on the ship I went in May. I would have been on the ship in May.
May of 51.
Yeah. I would have been on the ship in May of 51.
June, maybe. If you had training at Fort Riley, you would have had...
Yeah, it would have been
June. So June or July.
June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you got to Japan, so you rode the boat from Seattle to where?
Well, when I was on the boat going to Japan, they had sent a notice out to all the military on the ship that if you was interested in going to becoming a mechanic, to fill out a form, and I was kind of interested in being a mechanic, so I filled out the form. They needed seven people, and I got picked out of the whole ship. I don't know how many took it, but I got picked to go to wheel vehicle mechanic school at Iwo Jima, Japan. So I went there for 6 weeks, and it was Iwo Jima was one of the main ports during the Japanese War that they fought pretty hard for, but they turned it into a training school for everything. They had cooks training there. They had all kinds of training going on there.
So you were initially trained to go into the infantry. So your plan was going to be in the infantry. Yes, until that changed on the ship.
That changed when I applied for that and got that. That changed me from infantry to I was put in the 14th Engineer Combat Battalion, which was it was on the 38th parallel, but it was a conglomerate of troops from different countries along that line, and it was on 38th Panmunjom is where I was at, and that's where I ended up. I was a mechanic there when I started, and
So what rank were you when you got to, after mechanic school, when you got to Panmunjom?
When I got Panmunjom, I was a private first class. But I was doing, apparently I was doing a good job because I was only there a year and a half. And when I got out, I was a staff sergeant. So I was getting boosted every couple months.
Promotions.
Yeah.
So how
promotion.
so at Panmunjom, were you in charge of the unit, in your unit?
I was a platoon sergeant. There was about 60 people in our camp, and there was a mess hall there. It was all tents. We had all set up in tents, and there was a mess hall there, and there was a supply office there where you got supplies, and there was the mechanics. That was the biggest part of it, and I was in charge of 40 people plus. I was in charge of about 3/4 of the people in that camp, plus we had some rock, which was Republic of Korea. Well, they was in the military, Republic of Korea volunteers, and there was about 20 of them that come into our camp every day, and I had to line them out and train them how to drive trucks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I had it, and I was in charge of the power plant. We had a power plant. I was in charge of that. I was in charge of making sure people could get a shower. We had to pump water, and the seasons there was like Colorado. It was 20 below sometimes, and we was pumping water out of a creek that ran by there, and I had to make sure the water was heated up, and once a week you got to take a shower.
Once a week?
Once a week.
Huh.
Once a week you got to take a shower.
So what were your overall duties there?
I was originally I was a mechanic all the time I was there. Even after I was promoted to staff sergeant, I was in charge of the vehicles. All our work was done outside. We never had no shed or nothing to work in. We worked on equipment outside. The front line, I would bring front line equipment back, trucks and stuff, Jeeps, for us to work on. We get them fixed. We deliver them back to across the Hahn River. And we take them across the river. We deliver them back where they come from.
Huh.
And that was my main job, was a wheel vehicle sergeant.
So
in charge of the camp.
What were some of your off-duty things that you did at camp? What did you do when you weren't on duty?
On duty?
If you were off duty, what was your how was your time spent?
That's another story. We had a mess hall there, and after we got done eating, we would dump our stuff, our leftovers, in a barrel. Sorry.
It's all right. Take your time.
We dump our leftovers in a barrel and set them outside the gate, And there's any time a camp sets up, any kind of a camp sets up, why there's civilians come in and they was building houses out of tree limbs and stuff. They build up around the camp because they know they'd be protected. Well, as it ended up, there was all women and kids, and the kids would come up and get in them barrels and eat. Eat out of the barrels, and there was one little kid that just seemed that he never did get in front line to get something to eat. So I took him under my wing, and it was again the rules, but I brought him on camp and he slept underneath my bunk, get him out of the cold. And I took care of him for a year and a half while I was there. And he grew from a small kid to, he almost was as tall as I was. Once he got some food in him and was taken care of good, why, he became a young boy. And I almost re-upped because I didn't want to leave him. And then I decided that I was going to have to leave him sometime or other, so I just left, and that was the hardest thing I ever did.
What was his name?
Everybody is Kim.
So,
all the males are Kim over there, and I used to send, Montgomery Wards was still open, and I used to send for stuff, clothes that would fit him, and boots and stuff.
so the $17 that you were earning, you were spending on somebody else.
Well, basically. But 17, I had everything I needed.
Yeah.
You know, they fed you,
Clothed
had
you.
a place to sleep,
Yeah.
and they give you, I think we got a 6-pack of beer once a week. We got 6 beers once a week while I was there, so I was in good shape. I wasn't wanting for nothing. So.
What do you remember most about being at that camp?
I guess the kids, take care of the kids. I finally got with the mess hall sergeant. I knew him real well. You knew everybody in the camp. And I knew him real well, and I got with him, and I knew it wasn't legal, but we decided, him and I decided, that he would cook extra food, more than the camp needed, and he would set it outside the gate. And he done that. That's probably the most important thing I done, was take care of them kids.
You probably saved some lives. Do you remember any of your buddies? Who were some of your buddies while you were there?
Well, my best buddy was, he was a staff sergeant, same as I was, and he run the supply store. And I went to M&R to Japan twice, and we both went together. We got there the same time, so our R&R was both together, and I went with him.
Where at? In Japan? Tokyo or?
Tokyo.
Tokyo.
Yeah.
What was his name?
John Rakovich, and he got killed a couple years after he got out in a motorcycle accident. So, but that's the platoon sergeant was a real good friend of mine, or not the platoon sergeant, the company lieutenant was a real good friend of mine, and if he went to Seoul once in a while, he'd have to go to Seoul for something, for supplies. He'd ask me if I wanted to go, and I would go with him.
How long did it take to drive?
We was 50 mile.
Oh, not too far.
50, 60 mile from Seoul.
So while you were where you were at Panmunjom, did you see any battle at all? Were you involved in anything?
I was not. We got word that one time that we had to move back, and we moved back, and we got several warnings that we might be overrun, and our main reason we didn't pull back because we was protecting the camp that was there, the civilian camps. That's why they come in there. They knew we'd protect them. So once in a while, we'd have to, we'd get a call that we might be overrun, and we'd set up the perimeter around the village. And I'm talking village, I'm talking huts that were made out of slats and
just thrown
timbers
up
and straw and whatever they could put up.
How many civilians do you think were?
I would guess there was probably 20 ladies. They were all women. And that's where I got I didn't smoke, or I did smoke, but I quit smoking while I was in Korea, because they would come to we had a kind of a border around our, and they would come to the fence, and I'd have them wash my clothes for me, and I'd give them a pack of cigarettes to wash my clothes.
Huh.
So that's the way I paid for my clothes done.
Huh. So you were trained to be a mechanic. Were you trained to do anything else? You just served as a mechanic?
I'd already been trained how to fight.
Right, as an infantry.
And then we had carbine rifles we always carried with us. And that was smaller than M1 rifle. It was a shorter rifle, and it was automatic. So we had them, but we was trained to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
We had foxholes. We dug foxholes in camp, and that was all right. Except one time, we'd saved beer up. We'd saved beer up to celebrate 2 or 3 birthdays, and there was, I think, 20 guys in my tent, and for heat we had a coal oil burner stove, and we'd stacked that beer up. We had a lot of beer. Everybody was saving beer for a party. I think it was Christmas and for birthdays, but I got a little bit carried away, and I fell in one of the foxholes, and I couldn't get out.
Who came and got you?
It was raining and pretty slick, or I could have got somebody come out and pulled me out.
So, what's your proudest memory of what you did while you were in the military?
Take care of them kids. No question.
Did you receive any honors, medals?
Yeah, I received the Korea Service Medal and 2 bronze service.
It's got the letter attached to it.
I didn't know what you wrote.
Yeah. So what
I received
honors?
a Korean Service Medal and 2 bronze service medals and a United Nations Service Medal. The bronze medals were for 2 confrontations with the enemy.
What happened with that?
Well, it was, you didn't have to be in the battle to get them.
Right.
If people from your camp was in it, why, and some of our people were in the battle. I was in mechanics, so I was not on the front lines, basically.
Did you ever have any personal confrontations with any?
Mm-hmm. No.
Dad?
No.
It's all right. It's war.
No, I didn't.
So you were in the engineering battalion. What other battalion were you in? You were in the 14th Engineering Battalion?
Yeah.
Were you
Combat battalion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you in any other battalions or just the one unit?
Just that one.
Just the
unit.
one,
Yeah.
yeah. So you decided to get out. When you decided to get out, what were the steps from getting out from there? What
Well,
did they do?
They, I might as well enter this in. My brother Bill was in Korea with me, and he was on one end of the line and I was on the other end. And they called me once and wanted to know if I had a brother in Korea, and I said yeah. And they wanted to know what his name was, and I told them, and they said, well, he's been hit. And so I went to Japan for 2 weeks to see him, and when I got there, he was sitting up in bed. He'd lost some of his memory because he got hit in the head, and he was sitting up in bed, and he knew me, but he kind of forgot. Back memory kind of was
Long-term memory.
But he recovered from it, and he eventually became an optometrist and raised 5 kids. Bill.
So you had 2 brothers. You had Bill
And Irwin.
and
was
Irwin was in. Was
he
Uncle
was
Charlie ever hurt?
He was in the Army also, I think, and he went to Germany. And I really think he felt bad that he couldn't went to Korea with his other brother.
Yeah, yeah.
Always felt like he
Missed out.
missed out. But
So the only injury was to Uncle Bill. But
yeah, well,
you got injured.
I got injured. and
What happened?
Well, I was working on a vehicle out in the field, and our tools were in the back of a weapons carrier. We call them weapons carrier. They were a small larger than a pickup, and our tools were in the back of it. We had a tarp over the top and a tarp over the back of it, and I was out working our vehicle, and I went to open the tarp. It was wired down on the corners, and I opened the tarp, and the wind hit it, and that wire hooked the bottom of my eyelid and ripped it open, and it was ripped it open for, I think they took 3 or 4 stitches in it, and the closest camp, our camp, didn't have any what do you call them? Medicals didn't have anyone there could sew it up. I walked to a Canadian camp, which was up the road from us on the same line, and they said they didn't have a medic there either, but they had a guy that had sewed some guys up. So I said, well, I got to get it fixed. And they didn't have any anesthetics either. So I said, well, you got any whiskey? And I knew they had whiskey because I'd been trading with them. That's another story. But anyhow, I said, well, give me some whiskey. So I drank 3 or 4 good shots of whiskey, and I waited a bit, and I said, well, let's do it. So he sewed my eye up, and it's never been right, but the lieutenant, I had to wear a patch for 6 weeks or a month. And the lieutenant commander told me to fill out a paper on it that I should get a Purple Heart. Well, I was just doing my job, so I didn't do it.
So, what was the lieutenant commander's name?
I don't know. I didn't like him very well.
So I have something here that I want you to tell me about that you brought home with you.
Okay. I
Can you-
didn't bring it home with me. I sent it piece by piece because this is illegal to send home.
So tell me about that.
Okay.
How did you come across it?
Well, the way I got it, we'd got a call that we might get overrun, and so we was out on our designated areas, and I was walking the line, and I stepped on something, and it was this here gun, and I picked it up and took it to the supply sergeant and asked him if he could hold it for me till I could break it down and send it home. So that's how I got it home.
How did you get it home? What'd you do?
Well, you had to pack everything in grease, or on the ship the salt would get to it. You couldn't clean it good. You had to have it oiled good. So I'd send one piece at a time home and send it to the folks. Like this thing here I'd take off and put it in a package with mail or packages. I'd send something home once in a while. And when I sent the stock home, I wrote on the outside the box a camera tripod. And because they say they had x-rayed it once in a while, but on the biggest part of it, I just wrote on the outside the box, camera tripod, and it all got home, and when I got home, I put it back together.
Huh. What kind of gun is that?
That's a 7mm Russian rifle.
And that was a Korean's?
It was what the Koreans used, yeah.
So, when you got out of the service, what did you do? Where did you get out of the service?
Well, I got out of the service in we got back, we come back the same way we went. We come back to Seattle, and then we got on a train, and we actually rode a train from Seattle all the way back to Fort Carson.
Fort Riley?
Fort Carson.
Was it Fort Carson?
No.
Oh, in Colorado. Yeah, you were in
It was Fort
Carson, yeah, Colorado.
Yeah. Rode a train back there.
How long did that take?
A week, probably a week. And we'd stop at every little town, get off. And when I'm gonna go back a bit.
That's fine.
When we first got in, they didn't have room. Apparently, they didn't have, when we got done with our training at Fort Riley, they didn't have room for us there. So they sent us to Racine, Wisconsin on a choo-choo train to get our army clothes.
From Kansas to Wisconsin?
Went clear to Wisconsin, Racine, Wisconsin.
How long was that?
Took us 2 or 3 days going and 2 or 3 days coming back. And we just went up there and got our clothes and come back.
Huh.
So I know they just didn't have room for us.
Yeah. Put you on a train.
Put us on a train, and it was one of them smoking, it was a coal burner. And you could walk from car to car, you could jump from car to car, they just kind of turned you loose.
Huh.
Yeah, it was. But the only thing I'd done with this I shouldn't have done. I thought I'd go hunting with it. So I had this change, the scope, the light, the sights changed.
Oh.
I had these mounted, and I went and I took it to shoot it. And I couldn't hit the circle.
Oh.
This big around it. One would hit down here and one would some other place else.
Huh. So when you were on R&R, what did you do while you were on R&R?
Oh, we seen a lot of shows, and we seen a lot of shows. We go to shows. Japanese was good dancers, and we went to dance halls, and of course they always had beer, all the beer you could drink, and me and this buddy of mine would go dancing, and if you danced with a Japanese gal, she'd come and sit with you, and she'd stay with you until you went and danced with somebody else, and then she'd leave, and another gal would come and stay with you and they wouldn't dance with anybody else. They'd just dance with you. But,
so never a lack of dance partners.
No, all you had to do, and if you didn't like the gal you danced with, and she'd come sit with you, you'd just go ask some other gal to dance with, and she'd get up and leave. Yeah, it was hard to do. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. Went to a lot of shows and drank a lot of beer and danced a lot. But that's the way most of us spent our time. I was lucky to find a married man that wasn't interested in anything else.
Yeah.
So we just go have fun. But
is there anything else that you can think of that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I thought of something a while ago. Can't think of it.
So you got out in 1953?
Yeah.
You served 2 years.
I served 2 years, lacking 15 days of serving 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, and then the day before my birthday, May the 17th. And I got out May
53?
May of 53. I lacked 15 days of having 2 years.
So what'd you do when you came home?
Well, when I come home, my dad was farming my granddad's place, had a farm, and my granddad had always told me, he taught me how to fish. Dad was too busy raising kids. My granddad, I used to go with him a lot fishing.
That was
And
Nicholas
Gleese.
Gleese.
Yeah, and he told me if I ever wanted that place, I could farm it. So I tried farming for a year with no equipment. I had to borrow, rent, do whatever, and I farmed it for a year, and I knew I couldn't handle it. I wanted to be a farmer, but I farmed it for a year, and then I come to Denver. Dad had hitchhiked to Denver, and I come to Denver, and he got me and Charlie started, and Imogene says Bill was there too, and I guess he was. I'm pretty sure he was.
He was probably in school.
No, he was going to. She said he worked there, and I had a hard time. I don't know.
Because he went to be an optometrist, so he had to have gone to school at some point.
But anyhow, we worked at the Hackathorn.
So then you went to work for the state
Yeah.
in Denver?
Yeah, Charlie, well, they went on strike and that ticked us off at Hackathorn. Ticked us off, so Charlie and I started looking for a job. We started at the state, both together, same place, same day.
Hackathorn, what was Hackathorn?
It was a manufacturing. They made 57 millimeter shells and cardboard boxes and stuff, just different stuff. But it was a good paying job, and Dad was janitor there, and that's where he started when he first come hitchhiked to Denver. He started as a janitor.
So then you got on at the state, and you were with the state for how many years? How many years were you with the state?
I was with the state for 33 years. And then I went to work at the golf course after that and worked 22 years there. So that's about all. That's about all my military stuff.
Yeah. Anything else that you can think of from the military?
Well, I was trying to think. I know training them Koreans to drive was terrible. That was pretty.
Training a new kid.
We had mountains there just like Rapiders Pass. And they didn't know how to drive, and I had to take them up on the hills and give up my driver's seat, give it to them, and I sat over there in them big trucks and tandem trucks, and we'd have them drive up the hill, and then they'd make them turn around someplace and head down. Wow. It was not fun.
It's like
But
teaching a
most
new
of the guys
kid.
I trained was able to handle it when I got done with them.
Well, that's good. I mean, you can imagine how that impacted their life.
Well,
You know, they were probably able to carry on,
yeah.
you know, when they learned to
We
drive.
gave them something that they could be proud of.
Right.
For sure.
Right? Yeah.
I had done a lot over there. It was cold there. It was cold.
About like Colorado,
I
or
got my feet froze once.
you did?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, we didn't have enough shed to work out of. We just worked out in the open, crawl underneath the vehicle, work on them outside, and you just stayed there until you got it done. And of course, we had insulated boots, but sometimes that wasn't quite enough. And I remember my feet burning for 2 or 3 days, and my feet are awful touchy yet. So, but.
What's your overall feeling of having served in the military?
I'd do it again. I'd do it again if I was able. Yeah, I'm proud of it.
Good.
And I'm proud of all my brothers and daughters and sons.
You're generational. I mean, it dates back to the Revolutionary War. Your family has been in war after war after war.
Yeah.
So, it's a...
the whole family's been in every one of them.
Yep.
Dee, my older sister, was engaged to Jack Huff, and he got killed in World War II. So we've had deaths in the war.
And your sister was a nurse was she in World War One? She was
She was a nurse, and she was not in the service, but she done a lot of work on World War II
veterans.
Mm. Yeah. She worked at St. Anthony's House, Denver, most of the time.
Huh. Well, I think that's everything, unless you have anything else you want to talk about.
No, there was one thing I kept thinking about, but there's so many things that happen.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun, had a good buddy, and when I was in the training, Keene, he was from Deer Trail, Colorado. He was one of my best friends. We was headed for Korea both the same time. We split. We got to Denver together on the way to Seattle, and he got on one plane and I got on another, and I've talked to him. I've seen him since several times. He's from Deer Trail.
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
Do you know?
So.
His name was John Keene?
No, Keene's his last name. I always called him Keene. So, but that's all I need to put on the tape.
Okay. Alrighty.